Alright, so now you know that how you can handle an input element over here, right? So you have set the state for it, you are basically able to work with the state, you are basically able to work with the input field and all of these e.target.value, everything. But now the question is that what if you have multiple input elements, right? Now, what do I mean by multiple input elements? Suppose that I have another input element just similar to this. I'll just copy this and I'll paste this again, right? But this time I'll just change something. I'll just say that I want to maintain a state for a person's name. So I'll just say this name and I'll just do a set name for the state, right? And now these two input fields will actually work to get the entry for first name and the last name, right? So now you must be thinking that if we have two separate input fields, why not let's just have two separate states as well? So we can just create two states and we can just say this will be for first name, this will be for last name, right? Oops, yes, last name, first name, and we can just do set first name and set last name, something like that. Set first name, set last name, right? Something like that we can do. But now here is the problem, that if this particular if these properties are for just one person, right? So what we could have done it, we could have handled this in a better way. We could have handled this with the help of objects. So inside this object, inside one particular object, we could have had all of these properties, first name, last name, and if there are multiple properties, you can add them as well inside an object, right? Rather than creating two different states, rather than maintaining two different use states. So what I will do is I'll just remove one use state. I'll just get this first removed over here and I'll treat this name as an object, right? And for this object, I am going to have two properties. So this is going to be an object and I'm going to have two properties. One is going to be my first name, like that, and I'll just initialize this with an empty string. The second will be my last name and I'll initialize this with an empty string. That's how I'll do it, right? Great. So now I have the first name and the last name. So over here, I just need to change these values. So I'll just change these values to name and name, right? Because this is my name property, right? And this set text will now be changed to set name, right? Just making it for the name purpose. Now I'll just remove this h1, we do not need this. Let's check this out now. So if I go over here, you see two fields and they both say object, object, right? They both are saying object, object. Why? Because we have passed the name over here, right? We need to pass, yes, the properties, the object properties, the key names, right? So what we're going to do is I'll just add a default value over here. Let's say Bob, and over here last name, let's say Builder, right? Bob the Builder. All right. So now first name is Bob, last name is Builder. So what I can do is I can just go over here and I can get those keys out. So I'll just say name dot first name and name dot last name. Now let's see. Yes, you have Bob and Builder, right? But now if I go over here, I can change this, right? Over here as well, I can change this, right? So everything is allowed. But if I go to my inspect element right now, if I go to my console and if I refresh everything, you see everything is working perfectly, right? But there are better ways of doing it. So if you think, if you see over here, if you see what we are doing, we're just targeting the e.target.value over here as well. We are doing e.target.value over here as well, right? But now we need to basically set this separately for this first name and last name. So what we can do over here is we can just set this as an object, right? So what do I mean by that? If I talk about this first input field, so what I can do is I can just set the name over here and I can just use an object and I can say for the first name property, I need to set e.target.value. Just like that. And for the first case, I'll just keep my last name property empty. Similarly, for this case, I'll just remove this value thing from here. I'll just make this empty for now. Right. Similarly, so I've kept the first name over here, e.target.value. So whatever I'll type on the first name, it will get set, and I do not want to set the last name at that moment. Similarly, if I want to set the last name, I do not want to set the first name at that moment, right? So I do not want to do this. So what I will do is I'll just go over here and I'll just say last name, or I'll just use the first name and I'll say that okay, this will be empty, and now the last name will take up the e.target.value. Right? Alright, so name dot first name, name dot last name. Clear. Let's try this out. So if I go over here and if I type Bob, okay, Bob is written over here. And if I go to the second field and if I type builder, you see this is getting empty. And why is that? Because what we have done over here is we are saying that when I'm setting the first name, will not be allowed to set the last name because make last name empty. And then when I'm setting the last name, I do not want to set the first name, so I'm making this empty, right? So this is actually creating a little confusion over here, that when I set the first name, last name is not getting entered. When I enter the last name, first name is not getting entered. So how can we handle this particular thing? So over here, what we can do is we can use a particular tool, we can use a particular feature of JavaScript that is known as the spread operator, right? So how we can use that? So I'll just remove this last name from here and I will remove this first name from here. We do not need this. And I'll just remove the comma as well. And what I will do is whatever value was previously there, if I want to get that, I can just use the spread operator. So I'll just use spread name and first name, just like that. And similarly, I'll go over here and I'll do spread name and I'll just change the last name. As simple as that. So whatever was there previously, all the data will come and will only update the first name, and whatever was there in the name, that will again come, and now here will only update the last name. So no other particular field will be disturbed because of the changes that we are making to these particular keys, right? These particular properties. All right. So this is how you can do it. Now let's try this out. So if I just go over here and if I write Bob, yep, Bob is there. If I go over here, if I write builder, builder is there, and if I refresh this, so you see no error is there. You can write Bob, you can write builder, you can write all of these things, right? Everything is accepted. So this is for your first name, this is for your last name. So let me add some labels to these input tags as well. So I'll just add a label just for namesake. So I'll just remove this HTML4 tag and I'll just say this is going to be my first name, and similarly a label for my last name as well, and this is going to be my last name, right? So this is how basically you can actually handle your multiple input fields when you have multiple values, right? You have first name, you have last name, and you're handling them by just using an object, and by just using the spread operator, you're taking the previous value and you're updating this first name and last name values, right? So if you just want to see this in action, you can just go into this div. I'll just create an h1, and over here I'll just try to print the name object, right? Basically this name variable. So if you see, this will give you an error because we are trying to print an object, right? We cannot print an object entirely over here. We need to get the properties out of it. So I'll just print the first name and I'll just add line over here, and then I'll just print the name dot last name, just like that, right? And right now it is empty. So if I now do Bob, so you see Bob. If I now do builder, you see builder, like that, right? So you can use multiple input elements like this in React, right? So what we did, we use the object, we have these properties, we are just saying that okay, we have this e-target, we have this event object, but now what we need to do is when we are setting the first name, we do not want anything to happen to any other particular component, last name or anything. If you have age, if you have gender, you can have multiple values. So what I'm doing, I'm just getting the previous values and I'm just updating the first name. Similarly for last name, I'm just getting the previous values from the name object and I'm updating the last name. Like that, you can handle this, right? So this is how you can actually handle multiple input events in React, right? When you just want to have a same state for all the properties. But if you do not, you can actually go and you can actually write multiple states and you can handle it accordingly like that as well, right? All right, see you in the next lecture.